Good morning. Let's try again. Good morning. That's a lot better. There are 2 or 3 things that I would like to call to your attention and also make a couple of requests. One is that on May the 6th, after this gathering, we will have another Ordinary Life community lunch. There's no fee for this. It's an opportunity for us to sit around tables and have some table tent questions to get to know one another better. What we do want to know is if you plan to be here so that we will know how much food to get. And there's a sign-up sheet. If you have signed up, no need to do it again. But if you haven't and you plan to be here on the 6th of May, please let us know. The other announcement is that tomorrow at noon, the steering committee of Ordinary Life is going to meet. And you forgot. Okay. All right, it's now out there. And our primary agenda tomorrow will be doing the logistics that are involved in getting ready to have Michael Dowd here in November. So you can expect maybe within this week that registration for Michael Dowd will go live on a website, St. Paul's website, our website, some website. It will be available. I'll send it out in an email. And to that point, I would like to suggest that you get and read Michael Dowd's book, Thank God for Evolution. I think you would really like that book, and it would benefit from it a lot, and you will get to know him better. Wayne, are you all still going to host them?
Yes. Yes.
So I'll just tell you a little brief anecdote. The first time I talked to Michael Dowd to make firm the fact that he was coming, we talked about fee arrangements and all that sort of stuff that you do. And I said, and of course we will pay your airfare. And he said, I don't fly. It's a way that I can reduce the carbon footprint I make on the earth. So I drive wherever we go. Okay. I said, well, we'll of course provide you accommodations in Houston. And he said, we don't stay in hotels. He said, my preference is that you put us up with somebody on the committee that is inviting us. We would like to be their house guests. That's what we do. And if you're not able to do that, we'll sleep in a van. In our van. So in that regard, he is like Shane Claiborne. You've heard me mention him before. He's the guy who makes his own clothes and his own shoes and all of that. Just to make a statement about that. But Michael Dowd will be here. And go on YouTube and type in Michael Dowd TED Talk. TED Talks are less than 17 minutes. And watch him talk about his creed on evolution. So those are the 2 announcements I want to make. Reserve that November date and read that book. So Sherry and I have been in California this past week where my allergies really kicked up, you can tell. And so I mentioned that to Holly and asked her if she would teach today. If somebody ever asks you, why do you go to church? Why do you go to St. Paul's? Why do you go to Ordinary Life? One of the answers would be because of the people who are here. And Holly and Josh are friends of ours. And Holly is in another universe, you would call it the chairperson of our steering committee, but we don't use typical nomenclature. So she's the bus driver of the steering committee. So I'm really grateful to introduce to you Holly Hudley.
Richard said I should stand up and say I was going to give an hour-long presentation on finances. I'm not. And I asked Bill if I could borrow his shoes, but instead he gave me this pointer. So I have my shoes on and his pointer. Thanks. So, hi. Happy Earth Day. It's April 22nd. And I'm going to tell you guys a story in 3 parts. It's kind of a love story between us and the stars and the big, wide cosmos. I've been studying a lot about cosmology lately, and I think like most little kids did, maybe a lot of you at some point fell in love with outer space. I've decided I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. And I've fallen in love with it. So we live on this, I don't want my notices to come up. I thought oh well, if they do, John will tell me. Okay. We live on this planet, this really amazing planet that continually creates and connects and sustains life. And it's held in balance by everything around it, as well as everything on it. But I think in order for me to appreciate it, sometimes I need to step way back and just get a little perspective. So I've prepared this audiovisual journey to kind of engage our imaginations about our shared belonging with the Earth as well as to each other. Richard Rohr wrote recently in one of his meditations, in 1929, astronomer Edwin Hubble published his findings that revealed the universe was expanding. Many began to imagine that if the biggest frame of reference, the cosmos, was still unfolding, then maybe that is the pattern of everything. I want to connect the expanding outer space to our expanding inner space, and then add a third layer that I'm calling negative space, as the thing that straddles the two. And these 3 layers are all distinct, but they're also fluid and entangled. So part 1, outer space. This is an origin story that comes from Judaism. We were once all part of a brilliant ball of light, independent but perfectly balanced pieces that held the whole glowing sphere together. It was this way until the ball of light shattered into millions of fragments, scattering small bits of itself throughout the ether. As a result, good and evil became thoroughly mixed, and human souls were imprisoned in the shards of light. Since that time, our task has been to gather it back up, to repair the hurt in the world by performing acts of kindness and goodness. When we can do this, harness the light within, and connect with others in the service of love, then that original sphere will be reformed. Jewish teaching calls this tikkun olam. It literally means repair of the world. And I love, sorry, Bill, I know you. It sounds an awful lot to me like the very first seconds of the Big Bang, and it prophetically calls on us, on our goodness, to carry forth this process of evolution. This is Mae Jemison. She was the first African American in space. About her first space journey in 1992, she said, "I looked down at this planet, at our Earth, at the shimmering blue light that is our atmosphere. The really wonderful thing that happened to me in space was this powerful feeling of belonging to the entire universe. I could actually imagine myself in a star system 10,000 light years away. As much as any star or asteroid, we are part of this universe." When Ed White, a lot of you were alive and maybe watching TV when Ed White first conducted the first American spacewalk. And he had such great euphoria over this moment that he had to be cajoled and enforced to come back into Gemini 4. So when he finally did, he said, "Okay, I'll come back in." And it's the saddest moment of my life. I can only imagine that feeling. So I put together, as I prepared this talk, I had a picture book. It's a kid's book called Zoom in my mind. And you'll see it in a second. It has no words. And here I am trying to put words to this experience. And although you've probably seen something similar, I put the words to a video, but to a song called Spacewalk. It's by a group called Lemon Jelly, and it's actually Ed White's voice that we hear over the music, communicating with Mission Control in Houston. So, little Perhaps space exploration helped humans to truly discover Earth for the first time, this exquisite and fragile liveliness of this planet. In 1965, and even for most of my childhood, which was in the 80s, our solar system was considered the universe, and we learned about 9 planets that orbited one sun. Well, it was a fixed idea, kind of like the shape of Texas. But I've got news for y'all. Pluto doesn't even have planetary status anymore, and scientists think that 2 ice giants are coming into orbit within the next few years based on these gravitational disturbances in the Milky Way. My 8-year-old taught me that. Yeah. And today, astrophysicists like Brian Greene speculate there are billions of possible universes, and each one has its own creation event. And the one we're closest to understanding is the Big Bang of this universe. It's our shared story. Different religious traditions simply have different ways of describing this moment of origin. Last week, Bill mentioned Thomas Berry. Reading his work has been really pivotal to me over the last year. He describes the Big Bang as a moment of grace. He says, the great work is participating in our greater self. And as we achieve our greater self, so too will our planet become greater. The two are interchangeable. Moments of grace are sacred moments of transformation. Often, we take this to mean they occur on a personal scale. But there are cosmological and historical moments of grace, as well as religious ones. Such a moment occurred when the star out of which our solar system was born collapsed in enormous heat, scattering itself as fragments in the vast realms of space. At this moment, Earth too could take shape, life could be evoked, and intelligence in human form became possible. This supernova event of a star or of a second-generation star could be considered a cosmological moment of grace, a moment that determined the future possibilities of the solar system, of Earth, and of every form of life that would ever appear here. I love that definition of grace. And I do struggle with kind of words of Christianese, but his picture of grace is one I can definitely relate to. More problematic for me is the concept of an anthropomorphic God who answers some people's prayers to be okay during a hurricane or to turn their lights on afterward. It has this edge of competition to me, like maybe if I just did it the right way, I might win God's favor and maybe my prayers would come true. I don't really trust this version of the divine, and sometimes I get really bogged down trying to make sense of it, that I lose my footing. However, what I love about cosmology is that it has given me a chance to back up and to accept this possibility of infinity and to appreciate that maybe God is more in the big picture than in my anxiety about the right way to be a Christian. When I was in college, I took a class called Women, Saints, and Mystics in the Western Christian Tradition. This is the monastery where it took place. It was co-ed, and they wore brown robes and Birkenstocks. They were Carmelites. One of the friars was a PhD in astronomy, and I was really surprised to learn he'd studied anything other than being a monk. But it made him more human to me, like maybe he also had questions, or that maybe moving so far away helped him to see God close up. We sat on the floor of his hermitage, and we would listen to him talk about this great recycling of souls program. He said for us to think of it this way. He said, all stars are born, and all stars die. They are born of dust, and they return to dust. They take light years to fall to Earth, where their particles end up in our bodies. That moment changed my life. It validated something I had only begun to intuit, and maybe allowed me to investigate this doubt that only this special group of people called Christians made it to the heavens. It was the first time I've been told in a Christian setting that actually we all return to the heavens, that we're all part of this process. He didn't use the phrase, but I've heard it since, and especially in reading Thomas Berry. We are co-creators. We are part of nature. We're not separate from it, and nor are we the boss of it. Each body is no more or less sacred in this process of creation than any other. So when Genesis says, ashes to ashes and dust to dust, it might actually be true. I love this slide that shows that's a star being born. And this is a human cell. And they're so alike. There's so much symmetry in that. So be warned, there's some scientific language approaching, but if you can hear past it, I think you'll just hear a beautiful story about relationship. It all began with heat, lots and lots of heat, and a speck a fraction of the size of a period at the end of the sentence. The forces of nature were unified within, so much heat had generated inside that there was no choice but for the speck to explode and to expand rapidly. Gravity wriggled loose, matter was subatomic, and energy was in the form of photon waves. This explosion of heat cooled to less than 1 trillion degrees Kelvin, pretty hot still, and expanded beyond the size of our solar system. This all took 1/1,000,000th of a second. It was cool, and so it became from this to this within 1/1,000,000th of a second. It was then cool enough for the dancing to begin. So there probably was a little more than dancing going on. Quarks grabbed hadrons, and the two of them made protons and neutrons, which were 2/3 of an atom, the basis of life. The hadrons had no dance partners, the loners, and they separated from the photons and eventually made the stars and the planets possible. These are perhaps those little bits of light talked about in Tikkun Olam that separated from the whole. Without them, the cosmos would have remained blinding light. And at the same time, electrons began roaming around looking for a little fun, and they began to find their partners, neutrons and protons, and boom, the first atoms were born. This is a star nursery. These pictures from the Hubble telescope, I bought 4 books of pictures that the Hubble telescope has taken, and they're stunning. And meanwhile, amidst all this partying, huge clouds of dust and gas began to form called nebula. These are star nurseries, much needed because of all the dancing. There are lots of new babies to take care of. And they shrink and they break apart under their own weight. They become so hot that this nuclear reaction happens, and in the heated core, just hydrogen and helium form. Eventually, there's so much heat conducted that all the elements are forged, and all of those elements end up in our body. We have all of the elements in us. So we've been fated to the stars, it seems, since the beginning of time. The universe began as energy. 10 billion years after that first dance party, bacteria and archaea, next slide, got together to create a eukaryote, first plant cells. And then from there, life on Earth exploded. Talk about a long courtship, 10 billion years. In fact, we all started out as eukaryotes in our mother's wombs. All the while, the stars continue to die and expand and spread their cosmic dust through the atmosphere, creating the conditions for life. In every step of evolution, relationship is necessary. So this is me, 3 or 4 years old. Yeah, Supergirl. We are simultaneously millions and billions of years old. I mean, there's old stuff in us. And I'm only 42 years old, or 84 years old. And inside of me exists all of these little girl selves. My present self, and somewhere in there, my future, older, wiser self. All of this is mixed in with my human and cosmic ancestors. And as in our own inward growth, all of this takes time, billions of years. It's kind of crazy that we only get 75 to 100 years in this body to complete our process of evolution. But there's a beautiful kind of surreal poetry to all of it. The universe must have always been capable of consciousness. The first photons, neutrons, and electrons just needed to find each other to make this possible. Within the simplicity of the atom, there's an infinite possibility for form. That's amazing to me that one tiny thing has this capacity, has such potential. As the cosmos expands infinitely outward, we continue to expand infinitely inward. Ganesha is the Hindu god of beginnings and the remover of obstacles. And in Hinduism, the entire cosmos is considered one divine being. There are so many great stories about our belonging to this wider universe. As the movement of ecology and spirituality grows, so does the idea that we are of the earth. We're a conscious outgrowth of the earth. Cosmology does not look at the human species in terms of believers and non-believers. It takes the view that we all belong, that we all take part in our evolution as well as this planet's. And so without recognizing we are part of it, we cannot fully reconcile to it. This leads me to part 2, Inner space. There's a story in India that says, once upon a time, all humans had the Godhead inside of themselves. We behaved so badly, however, that the gods took it away from us. They were trying to figure out where to hide it, so we couldn't find it. One of the gods said, put it at the bottom of the ocean. They'll never find it there. Another god said, nope, one day they'll discover the bottom of the ocean and they'll find it. So the first god said, let's put it in the skies and the heavens. The second one says, nope, they'll learn to fly someday and they'll find it there. Brahma spoke up and said, I know where to hide it. We will put their divinity deep in the center of their own being, for humans will never think to look of it there. The same concept is talked about by contemporary astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. I brought him here. He's here. I'm going to show you a
What is the
quick
most
video.
astounding fact you can share with us about the universe?
The most astounding fact
The most astounding fact.
is the knowledge that the atoms that comprise life on Earth, the atoms that make up the human body, are traceable to the crucibles that cooked light elements into heavy elements in their core under extreme temperatures and pressures. These stars, the high-mass ones among them, went unstable in their later years. They collapsed and then exploded, scattering their enriched guts across the galaxy. Guts made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and all the fundamental ingredients of life itself. These ingredients become part of gas clouds that condense, collapse, form the next generation of solar systems, stars with orbiting planets. And those planets now have the ingredients for life itself. So that when I look up at the night sky, and I know that, yes, we are part of this universe, we are in this universe, but perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect on that fact, I look up. Many people feel small because they're small and the universe is big, but I feel big because my atoms came from those stars. There's a level of connectivity. That's really what you want in life. You want to feel connected. You want to feel relevant. You want to feel like you're a participant in the goings-on of activities and events around you. That's precisely what we are, just by being alive.
We've traveled now from outer space to inner space, and according to both science and religion, we are not separate from this universe. If you believe that God and the greater cosmos are one, then we are also not separate from God. We simply need to look inside. Could this be our daily spiritual practice? Looking for the universe inside of ourselves? By the way, Latin for universe is combined into one, or whole. This is a body that's kind of made of stardust and the elements flowing from it. One of the ways we get to grow into wholeness is by looking at how we create division, both interpersonally and internationally. Tyson says, The Earth doesn't know is artificially divided and color-coded into the United States and Mexico, North Korea and South. From the vantage point of space, there are no lines, we can't perceive race, we can't hear different languages, and we can't see barriers like walls or prisons. How does this view of the Earth from above impact our identity as a species on this planet? Not one separated by culture or color or creed, but as a human species, united by our ability to experience compassion and creativity, by our ability to see ourselves both from above and from within. If we can connect to this point of light in ourselves, I believe we can connect to the point of light in everyone else. And no matter what we believe in, whether it's something or nothing, I think we can all live with a little bit more of that love. This is another slide that shows more symmetry between the birth of stars on the top and neural firings in the brain. So again, what's out there is also in here. Isaac Newton's law of motion was based on a theory of order and predictability. But today, scientists are actually calling that into question and wondering whether or not the universe was actually born out of chaos. What we know for sure is that chaos and order coexist. The explosion of that tiny speck 14 billion years ago was a moment of chaos. Likewise, neuroscientists are starting to understand that even our brains operate on the edge of chaos. That makes sense to me. It is a system of stability and turbulence, firing off even when we're not conscious. This lumpy little mass weighs about 7 pounds, but inside of it, nearly an infinite number of neural connections can happen. Recently, I watched a recorded conversation between a neuroscientist, David Eagleman, some of you have heard of him, and a mystic named Sadhguru. The neuroscientist continues to seek to understand how the mind works, and the mystic strives to be. Actually, the mystic probably doesn't strive at all, he just is. In this conversation, the mystic describes 4 aspects of our mind. We have our intellect, what we know. We place an awful lot of value on this culture of what we know. We could probably also call this our ego. Identity, it's totally wrapped up in intellect because what we think we believe often has to do with where we think we're from and who we think we are. And then there's memory or manus. He gives the example of the nose we have. It could be the same as your great-great-great-great-grandfather's nose, someone you never met and never encountered, but your body remembers. This illustrates the idea that everything is stored and remembered in our cells, all the way back to the stardust we're made of, to how well we were loved or not as an infant. And then there's chitta, our pure intelligence. It's unsullied by memory, identity, and intellect. It's a dimension of intelligence that we cannot quite touch with our conscious mind. If we think of it this way, how many of you had breakfast? I did. We had breakfast this morning. By afternoon, that breakfast will be fully integrated into our body. It becomes one with the body. So chitta is kind of the wanting of the bread in the body, or the wanting that is also possible between all of us. It is not at all tangled up with nationality, gender, race, or pedigree. Bored with questions of the intellect, the mystic says, I can pack the entire cosmos inside of a mustard seed. Sound familiar? There are 5 elements to understand within that mustard seed: earth, air, fire, water, and ether. If we can understand the fact that these 5 elements interact, but not how, within that mustard seed, in order for it to be, then we can understand the fabric of everything. Everything is inside of it, and everything is also inside of us. So I'm thinking maybe our evolution is both in the how and in the being. The how gives us the knowledge that our atomic structure is no different than everything else's, but the being places us among the elements without having to make sense of it. This tension is maybe why we still have not surpassed the body, though someone like Stephen Hawking came pretty close. He was really of the mind. Maybe we are part of the beauty around us, and given particular people we can love, just to make sure that we have a capacity for love. Inside of our bodies is a universe, and like the universe out there, We can struggle to see all that lies in here, and yet it is here for us to discover. Physics proves that matter cannot be created or destroyed, that it can only change shape. If we are matter that can experience love really high up there in the kind of expanded level of consciousness, then I wonder what shape we can take. If we have a limited capacity to grow upward, I was 5'6" in the 7th grade, I'm still 5'6". I wore size 9 in the 4th grade, I had really big feet. But I still wear a size 9. But as I expand inward, a process that Cynthia Bourgeot calls infurling, these possibilities are limitless. I won't grow taller, but I can keep growing in here. To echo the Gospel of Thomas that Bill often repeats, what we bring forth from within us transforms us. Someone left that in the collection tray. Last week I found a little fortune cookie. I saved it for you, actually. If we take away that possibility for transformation, the whole evolutionary and personal process collapses. I don't know about y'all, but I definitely slide up and down this cone of expansion and contraction probably daily. But look what happens as we move toward love and enlightenment. It gapes infinitely open. Shame is at a fixed point. So it makes me think maybe our contraction is limited, but maybe our expansion is limitless. The jellyfish is also in a continual state of contraction and expansion. And it must move toward the light at the ocean's surface to survive. I want to say that again. It must move toward the light in order to survive. We're not so dissimilar. I guess the question is, why should what's going on out there in the cosmos matter to our inner work? Well, I think it's because each of our individual cells are an exact hologram of the structure of the stars and of our planet. Let's take the image of a spiral, for example. It's the shape of our galaxy. It's the shape of a hurricane. It's the shape of a snail shell. And it's the double helix of our DNA. I've heard Bill say that it's also the shape of our inner experience, that spiral staircase that we go up and down. We go down from time to time in the depths of pain and sorrow, and then we come back up into the light. We're going up, we go down, and we're always gathering strength and wisdom. Within these spirals, our task is to become fully human, fully present to our dynamic relationship to everything. From the vastness of the cosmos to the minutia of the cell. The tension, I think, is in holding space for this beautiful sense of belonging to something so large, so vast, as well as for the likelihood that in our own human bodies, we may still experience intense loneliness. And you're not alone in that either. Also, like the Earth, our bodies are 70% water. As we've seen, water can cause great devastation and great beauty. Dr. Masaru Emoto, there you go, did a bunch of experiments on the molecular structure of water. Has anyone ever heard of him, Dr. Emoto? Yeah. He collected water near cities with lots of pollution and also in wild mountain rivers. And he discovered that the less polluted water, shown on the right, had this beautiful crystalline structure, whereas more polluted water was broken apart and malformed. Based on his experiments, he also asserted that the physical structure of water changed based on positive or negative vibrations. He literally did experiments where people spoke to the water, or meditated over it, or prayed over it. So these are photos of the water molecules exposed to words alone. Words of love and gratitude on the right, and shame and disgust on the left. I know which one I would drink. Yeah, so if we think about the fact that we are 70% water, how we are spoken to, and how we speak to those around us impacts our internal structure. So we could also apply that to mean that what we put into our water directly affects the structure both of the earth as well as of our bodies. This leads me to part 3, negative space. I had a lot of titles for this part. Liminal space, dark space, prayer, or maybe this is what they mean by the Holy Spirit? I'm not sure. It's one I'm still kind of putting my arms around, and I think it's something that's better felt or seen. Chapter 11 of the Tao Te Ching reads, 30 spokes unite at one hub to make a wheel, but what is missing makes it useful. Clay is shaped into a bowl, but it is the empty space that makes it useful. Cut-out doors and windows make a room, but its empty space makes it useful. So what is there is beneficial, but what is not there makes things useful. Emoto's water experiments make me think immediately of prayer, which is a bit of a sticky concept for me. I'll admit that I don't have a practice of out loud verbal prayer. I don't really beseech God, and I don't hear God speak to me. Prayer is less transactional to me than it is in what I do. It's me trying to take an open stance to my surroundings. I'm not trying to opt out of my daily spiritual practice. I'm just trying to integrate this way of seeing in any given situation. People say all the time, you're in my prayers, I'll pray for you, or please pray for me. But neither the universe nor a hurricane stop or change course when I pray. So I've asked myself, what good is it? Negative space is really easy to define in terms of art terms. You see on the picture on the right, we can make the forms out of the negative space. It's a little harder to define as the shifting space in between us or as prayer. Maybe listening to this chant can help us illustrate how prayer is doing can affect the energy in a room, how it can connect us. So we're going to listen to a Benedictine chant for a minute. And if you want, you can close your eyes and just kind of relax into it. If you're uncomfortable with closing your eyes, just try to take a breath and watch the visuals. Just breathe that in for a second. Notice if you feel more peaceful or maybe more relaxed. And maybe our molecules are more unified, I'm not sure. Maybe this room has a little more connectivity with I think if I sounded like that, I probably would pray all the time. My daily spiritual practice is right here. It's about as colorful and varied as this photo represents. I remember once Sherry said to me, I don't fully trust a mother who hasn't at least fantasized about leaving her child at daycare and never looking back. I'm super trustworthy. That's the case. I've never left them though, I promise. I love my kids more than almost anything in this universe. Maybe Josh is at the very tippy top of that list. But I've definitely entertained putting a free sign on them and setting them out to the curb, right there next to the recycling bin. I think sometimes my spiritual practice is in trying to toe the line between chaos and order. I haven't managed to totally slip into chaos, but my kids might say there have been some tenuous moments. Maybe Josh would say there's been some tenuous moments. We've survived so far. And if prayer is interactive, if at any given moment we're sharing an overlap in frequencies in the space between us, then it's a point of intersection. And when I gaze into my child's eyes lovingly, that's reflected in his smile. When I yell, that's reflected in his tears. Both have happened. In psychology, attachment theory says that the quality of love given by our primary caregiver is the key ingredient in developing an early sense of safety and belonging. We all have this ability to give love, but we can only truly experience its fullness when it's shared in between the spaces, in between us. Love happens in that space, as does shame or frustration. I'd like to think I'm providing these three little guys with plenty of opportunities for growth. It is, after all, the dark spaces that render the light visible. Right now, it seems easy to believe that just even societally, we're in the process of imploding. I think there's a quiet reforming happening, though. I have enough hope that people are becoming curious about each other's lives, and in our timid, imperfect ways, we are actually clumping together in little constellations, and we're forming new stars. I'm not exactly sure why we need chaos to reveal the best of ourselves, why destruction begets deep compassion, but this constant reordering of things, from chaos into cohesion, is ever present. I live with it in my household every day. That's my youngest, chasing the pigeons. Off into chaos. He's chaos, actually. They scatter and divide, and in their arc of flight, the pigeons return. They reform, and they regroup. They land where they started. This same kiddo, by the way, the other day announced to me that he doesn't believe in God, that he believes in our solar system, in the Milky Way, and in the galaxies. And he also believes in Santa, because Santa has magical powers, but not God. I don't know if I've cleared up anything about prayer. I've never experienced God singling me out to speak to me, though the idea is really comforting. I can relate to prayer as an exchange of energy. It's like a hug. It happens while holding space with someone's deepest feelings, when we cross over from our own inner space into that negative space. I think I can use baseball in a hurricane as an example here. The night of Game 7 in the Astros run for the championship, I prayed. Have y'all seen this picture? Yeah, I love this picture. Despite all of my misgivings about beseeching God and a prayer to a volitional God with a favorite baseball team, I said a silent one for the Astros to win. It felt like the right thing to do, like something might be righted in our Harvey-stricken city if they were to win. I don't think I was alone in praying that night, and I don't think I was alone in my superstitious rituals, whether it was sitting in a certain way or leaving lucky underwear on for 7 days or wearing a hat backwards. I didn't leave my underwear on for 7 days. A lot of us performed rituals. A psychologist might call this anxiety management. Either way, our prayers were answered, our rituals worked, luck was on our side, and the Astros won. Yay! They took us right out of despair. Something happened between Houstonians in that moment. We mourned with strangers in August, and then we high-fived them in October. It was like being in church, only better. It was like falling in love. I think the Astros would have won if I hadn't prayed, but their win felt like it meant something. If we're baseball fans, I think to a lot of us, and I know a lot of people who became baseball fans and were like, what's an inning again? But they loved it. We went through this collective pain and joy in 2017, and we belonged to each other in both of those feelings. Our collective joy felt like a great alleluia rising up over the city. And between exposed studs, the soggy mattresses on the corners, and flooded cars, people came together to hope and to cheer. And I mean, seriously though, can we get real for a second? The Cosmos does have a favorite baseball team, right? I mean, it's the Astros. That's their name. That's right. So let's rewind to about 8 weeks before the World Series. Harvey happened, and it tossed us completely out of orbit. I did not pray then. No prayer could have diverted the storm, nor kept the floodwaters from rising. I sat dumbfounded and totally overwhelmed on my couch. The prayers were at work, I think, when we found each other afterward. I found myself setting up a small shelter at a fundamentalist Anglican church in my neighborhood. I worked alongside a woman from West U whose kids I babysat a long time ago, a lesbian couple, a doctor and a social worker, and a very tall pastor who had moved to Houston 1 week before Harvey. The education building had been opened up to house several families, an undocumented group of Hispanics, a 3-generation deep, all-female Black family, a single mom who, by the age of 39, had 3 grandbabies and 6 kids, aged 13 to 21, a transgender teen, and an alcohol-infused papa with 5 kids. The intersection of despair and generosity brought these people together. And like the Tao says, the space made it possible. When we helped them find new homes and we received donated money for their rent, no one asked about race, sexuality, immigration status, or religion. Chaos disrupted our lives in a serious way, and yet, dare I say, it also brought us together. We did what the stars do. We brought that energy and warmth together and created a light amidst the cold and wet. The foundation of the cosmos is relationship, which is possible only if we forge the negative space. And like negative space, dark matter, this is dark matter. Well, we can't really observe it, but they think it's what dark matter looks like. It can't be directly observed. Scientists believe we can detect the effects of dark matter based on the universe's form, and calculations show that galaxies would actually fly apart if we weren't held together by dark matter, if they did not contain a lot of matter that we couldn't see. So dark matter in negative space, to me, seems synonymous with love. It's this thing that we can't see, that we don't totally understand, and yet it's everywhere, and it moves us. If we are, in fact, the image of God, and God is in the image of love, then love is in the shape of us. Our capacity is far bigger than we imagine, and if you've loved more than one kid at a time, you know this to be true. So we know we can create more love if it is needed, and right now I think it's needed. My oldest son, not my atheist, once asked me, "Mom, how does God talk?" And I answered, I didn't think God talked in words, so he went on. God talks in planets, God talks in stars, God talks in sky, God talks in rain and in thunder and in lightning. God talks in everything. If I consider the poetry of my 8-year-old, I think I would conclude that God talks in all spaces, but maybe not in ways that we can always hear. I definitely think that the cosmological view of humanity could sound naive, but I also think it gives us a much broader canvas for what it means to be human. We are more than our outward identity. On an abstract philosophical level, it totally works to say, we're all just made of stardust, can't we just get along? But let us remember that the smallest to the largest stars are born from chaos. So how do we make sense of this? We also need to recognize that destructive nature in ourselves. We have the power to destroy and create. Our structure is no different. My structure is no different or better than any one of yours, and yet I occupy the body of a white woman in middle-class America. It's rather easy for me to want to lay down labels and differences. I've never actually had to compare my race to another as any less than in this country. or question my belonging in this society. But without realizing we've bought into it, many of us have deluded our thinking that our wealth or our whiteness means something about our true identity. Others of us think we're colorblind, a stance that, if we're being really honest, is not helpful or possible. We do see color, and that's okay. I think what we make it mean is what we need to investigate. If we can humble ourselves to that, if we can more honestly enter the spaces that divide us, our willingness to wrestle with what's difficult at the very least creates more empathy and awareness. I believe we can turn that chaos of racism and classism and sexism into cohesion. We created it, so I think we can destroy it. We get to decide whether our evolution is toward love. We certainly have the capacity for it. The answers to these issues are far bigger than you or I alone can imagine, partly because some people are really hard to love, and also because the answers are more than an equitable education system or achieving economic inclusion. But these things help, but it's really about a change in consciousness, a radical shift in what it means to be human, to grow in our understanding that we are distinct, but we're not separate. There's an endless light in the cosmos, wrought by stars and suns and moons and who knows how many other universes. And that light is made visible by the dark spaces, both out there and in here. Woo, sorry, forgot about that. Ava DuVernay, she directed A Recall in Time, said the glimpse of eternity on this planet is what we know as hope and joy and love. Small words for some of the most powerful forces in the universe. Forces that connect us to the spaces between the stars and to the best part of ourselves. We can't tell the story of any one of us in the universe without telling the story of the universe itself. In his time, Teilhard de Chardin understood that to mean that the universe is both spiritual and physical. Matter cannot exist without form, and our form is spiritual. I'm coming to understand that my form of prayer is more in how I choose to be in the world. Teilhard said, if we can learn to harness for God the energy of love, then on that day, for the second time in history, man will have discovered fire. So I say we start that right about now. I'm going to let you guys dance on out of here to a song. So have a great week, and thank you for sharing this space with me.